A quorum is present. We will defer the prayer and the pledge until a little later in the session. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Wednesday, March 2nd, 2016. The Assembly met at 7
Mr. Holden
a.m.
moves. Mr. Mays seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Under motions and resolutions, absences, the absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Esteemed guests and members, if you haven't already done so, now would be the time to silence your cell phone. Mr. Holden, you are recognized for your motions.
Madam Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 and allow Speaker-elect Rendon to have guests and photographers on the floor, in the gallery, and at the rostrum today for the swearing in as the 70th Speaker in the California State Assembly.
Without objection, the request is granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. This afternoon's prayer will be offered by Assemblymember Rich Gordon of the 24th Assembly District. Mr. Gordon, you are recognized at your desk.
Lord, we celebrate new beginnings, the dawn of the day, the birth of a child, spring training, and New Year's Eve. New beginnings are a time of promise. All is possible, all is potential, and hope is infinite. Today, this institution celebrates a new beginning. As we do so, let us not forget the legacy of leadership that brought us to this place. May the past inform the present and prepare the future. At this new beginning, we ask you to help us. Help us to find consensus and meet on common ground whenever possible. Help us to disagree with dignity and with respect. Help us to value this institution and the trust we have been granted by the people of California. Let us serve with humility as we attempt to ferret out how to be the best possible stewards of this time and place. Please bless us. Bless our Speaker, Anthony Rendon, and bless this place we call home, our great state of California. Lord, we ask these blessings at this new beginning, and we say, Amen.
Amen. We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us for the flag salute. I'd ask Assemblymember James Gallagher of the 3rd Assembly District to move forward to the dais to recite the flag salute in American Sign Language. We ask you to join Assemblymember Shirley Weber of the 79th Assembly District as she leads us in the pledge. Dr. Weber.
Madam Speakers and members, as we prepare to observe the greatest element of the democracy, which is the orderly transference of power, let us be cognizant of the Pledge of Allegiance and what we pledge our commitment to. Please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. We will now move to our special order of business. File item number 1 is the swearing in of Anthony Rendon as Speaker of the Assembly. It is my pleasure to introduce some very special guests who are present today for this historic occasion. Members and guests, please welcome the 39th Governor of the great state of California, the Honorable Edmund G. Brown, Jr. the President pro tempore of the California Senate, the Honorable Kevin De Leon. A number of our constitutional officers are with us today. Please welcome the Attorney General, the Honorable Kamala Harris. Our State Treasurer, the Honorable John Chung. Our State Controller, the Honorable Betty Yee. The Superintendent of Public Instruction, the Honorable Tom Torlakson. Our Insurance Commissioner, the Honorable Dave Jones. And from the Board of Equalization from District 2, the Honorable Fiona Ma, Chairwoman of the Board. From the U.S. House of Representatives, the Honorable Lucille Roybal Allard, representing California's 40th Congressional District. It is now my honor to introduce several former Assembly speakers who served this House with great distinction. We welcome the Honorable 62nd Speaker of the Assembly, the Honorable Cruz Bustamante. The 63rd Speaker of the Assembly, the Honorable Antonio Villaraigosa. The 64th Speaker of the Assembly, the Honorable and Senator Robert Hertzberg. And the 67th Speaker of the Assembly, the Honorable and Congresswoman Karen Bass. The 68th Speaker of the Assembly, the Honorable John Perez. We have with us also today a number of other special guests. Let me welcome the Los Angeles County Supervisor, Hilda Solis. The Mayor of the great city of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. The Mayor of Southgate, Jorge Morales. And representing the great city of Maywood, the Honorable Eddie De La Riva. And it's a real pleasure to welcome back to this chambers former members of the Assembly and the senators who are with us today. Would you stand? All of our former colleagues. There are other great guests with us today, including distinguished public officials from throughout this state, representatives from our consular corps, members of the military, and special guests who have joined us today. Let me say welcome to you all. We are so thrilled that you've joined us. So if I am to sum up the last 22 months as Speaker of the Assembly, I would say it's been about leaving no one behind. It remains as true today as when we negotiated the water bond almost 2 years ago, and it remains true as we finally addressed developmental disability funding last week. No one gets left behind. As we've looked at the budget and worked with our iconic governor, it's been about bringing others along and not leaving struggling Californians behind, all while shoring up our reserves, paying down debt, and investing in a rainy day fund to protect the new, hard-achieved fiscal stability for California under this legislature and this governor. So today, I want to use my very short remarks to say thank you to my colleagues for giving me this incredible opportunity. I want to say thank you to my spouse, Jennifer Lassar, for her strong support and encouragement. Thank you. She deserves all of that and more. You know, again, to my colleagues, and I'm going to say particularly to my class, Republicans and Democrats, we experienced serious deficit when we got here. And the restoration, we were able to be part of that too. So we have a unique perspective, and we had determination to change that situation, and we did. To the 3 Republican leaders I had the opportunity to serve with, Connie Conway, my friend and classmate, Kristen Olson, and to Chad Mays, I want to say thank you to you as well. Governor Brown, it's been a real honor and a pleasure to work with you, directly with you, and with your incredibly hardworking staff. Thank you. And to my incredible partner in the Senate, President Pro Tem Kevin De Leon, it's been great working with you to accomplish so much. Thank you. And I'm going to add to the incredible speaker staff, led by Greg Campbell, Nick Hardiman, John Casey, Kim Craig, Arnie Sowell, Ryan Spencer, Rick Simpson, Chris Woods, and all of the policy staff, the support staff. Thank you. Your dedication and your deep love for this institution shines brightly. And finally, but also very important to me, to my district staff who couldn't be here today, Denise, Deanna, Jason, Tony, Chevelle, Jennifer, and Victor, I want to thank you for giving me the ability to focus elsewhere by guarding very safely our needs in San Diego. To my county and the city of San Diego, we made a little history. Thank you. And now, to move forward to a renewed opportunity for this institution and for our state. Under new term limits and with a new, very committed and determined leader, someone who's prepared to take the reins with passion and with thoughtfulness, and that is Anthony Rendon. You know, when I got to Sacramento, I honestly didn't know what I'd think of this place, this world. Actually, truly before, and my friends in local government will agree with me, I saw it as a place that complicated our lives and made it difficult for us to succeed. Now, sometimes that may still be a little true, but I came to love the work that we get to do here in our state's capital, the work we collectively do to improve the lives of Californians. When you love something, you want to leave it in good hands. I intend to lose no sleep tonight. No one understands that more than our next Assembly Speaker. Anthony Rendon has dedicated his entire life to making it better for other people. Early childhood education, Head Start, K through 12, higher education, his own incredible story, and how that focus changes individual lives. And it changes communities, and it changes our state. That's what Anthony is committed to. His work on environmental issues is well known and applauded. And of course, his work and leadership on the issue of water, one of the most critical issues in our state, and our successful water bond is certainly acknowledged and appreciated by all. A true leader, I couldn't be more pleased to leave the Assembly in such capable hands, and that leader will be Anthony Rendon. And now we're fortunate enough to hear some remarks from our Assembly member and colleague, Luis Alejo. Mr. Alejo, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With permission to read, please.
Without objection.
Dear Governor, to our special guest, and to my colleagues in the Senate and Assembly, today I rise on a most historic occasion in the history of our Golden State and in the history of the California Latino Legislative Caucus that was founded back in 1973. I am honored to have the privilege of standing before you today to say a few words about my good friend Anthony Rendon, the next Speaker of the California State Assembly, in front of his family, in front of his wife Annie Lam, and in front of the people of our great state. Mr. Rendon today becomes the 70th Speaker of the state of California and the 5th Latino Assembly Speaker, following the Honorable Cruz Bustamante, Antonio Villaraigosa, Fabian Nunez, and John Perez. And for the first time in the history of our state, both houses in the California legislature, in the 8th largest economy in the world, will be led by 2 Latino Americans. And that includes the great leadership of Senate President Pro Tem Kevin De Leon, the first Latino Senate President Pro Tem since 1883. And as chairman of the California Latino Caucus, I must briefly point out what a proud moment this is for me and for the caucus, which started with humble origins 43 years ago when there were only 5 Latino legislators here in Sacramento. Our next speaker comes from modest origins, and his story is an inspiration for so many of our young people who also struggle in their early years and were not perfect students. By his own admission, Mr. Rendon was not a particularly good or motivated student while attending public schools in Southern California. But after high school, working in a tough job at a warehouse, he took a chance at higher education and, like many of us, enrolled in a community college. But it had a profound impact and changed his life, and that is where he discovered his love for philosophy and his love of reading. And that humble beginning at a California community college served as a springboard to transfer to Cal State Fullerton, where he earned his BA and his master's degree, and later to transfer to the University of California, Riverside, where he earned his PhD. After serving as an adjunct professor at CSU Fullerton for a number of years, Mr. Rendon entered the nonprofit world, and it was while serving as executive director of Plaza de la Raza Child Development Services in Los Angeles County that he became interested in politics. You see, those politicians in Sacramento kept cutting his funding. They kept cutting his funding. So he decided to join them, but to be able to make better decisions. And in fact, when he won his assembly seat in 2012, it was the first elected office he ever held. And he quickly earned a reputation of being an effective champion for access to education, open government, and environmental justice. These were all issues that were particularly important to the hardworking people of his district. As a freshman assembly member, he won the confidence of Speaker Perez, who appointed him to chair the Assembly Water, Parks, and Wildlife Committee, and that put him in a position to demonstrate his outstanding leadership skills as he brokered one of the most important pieces of legislation in our state's history, and he held hearings all over the state. And we all know that we're talking about the historic $7.5 billion water bond that won overwhelming bipartisan support here at the Capitol and from voters statewide. His humble approach to successfully bringing all sides together on the water bond earned him respect on both sides of the aisle. His colleagues in the Assembly, both Democrats and Republicans alike, recognize his integrity and accomplishments, and that is why we elected him to be our leader. And let us be clear today that Mr. Rendon will be the speaker for everybody, not just Latinos, not just the majority party, but for all hardworking Californians. And that is something that all of us as Americans can certainly be proud of. But his role is especially significant, as Speaker Rendon will have the opportunity to serve as Speaker longer than anyone since the Honorable Willie Brown. But being Speaker is not just a notable title. It's about leading, it's about making tough decisions, and looking out to ensure that every Californian can realize the American dream. Speaker Rendon is a philosopher who reminded us that if we are not asking ourselves that question, what is justice, each and every day, we are not doing our jobs. We know that leading isn't easy, but we all know that when you look out for the least among us, the poor, the immigrants, the disenfranchised, the homeless, and the marginalized, you end up lifting up everyone in our great state. In the words of the great poet Pablo Neruda, he wrote, "My duty moves along with my song. I am not, that is my destiny. I exist not if I do not attend to the pain of those who suffer. They are my pains, for I cannot be without existing for all who are silent and oppressed. I come from the people, and I sing for them. My poetry is song and punishment. I am told, you belong to darkness. Perhaps, but I walk towards the light. The next speaker will keep California walking towards the light, walking towards justice, and walking towards moving our state into a new chapter of greater prosperity for all, of social and economic justice, and where we ensure our constitutional ideal of liberty and justice for all. I just want to share a few words in Spanish. Quiero compartir unas pocas palabras en español para todos los que están oyendo por todo nuestro gran estado. Hoy es un día histórico para nosotros como californianos, porque hoy un hombre latinoamericano de raíces humildes ha logrado llegar al puesto más alto en la recámara de la Asamblea Estatal. Y por primera vez en la historia de nuestro estado, dos latinos toman dos puestos de liderazgo con el presidente del Senado, Kevin de León, y con el presidente de la Asamblea Estatal, Anthony Rendon. Que hoy se oiga por todo el mundo que California sigue siendo un gran estado donde el sueño americano se puede realizar para cada persona. Pero más que nada, el próximo presidente de la Asamblea no se ha olvidado de sus raíces, de dónde viene y de su meta de siempre cuidar a los más pobres, a los desamparados, a los inmigrantes y los con más necesidad. Sabemos que si levantamos a los de abajo, levantamos a todos en nuestro gran estado. Es una gran inspiración, un gran orgullo de dar una gran bienvenida, un gran aplauso tremendo al próximo presidente de la Asamblea Estatal de California. Members, it is with great pride that I now ask you to join me in welcoming our new and the 70th Assembly Speaker of the great state of California, Mr. Anthony Rendon. Sí se pudo.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo. At this time, I'd like to introduce the family of Speaker-elect Rendon. A very special and warm welcome to his spouse, Annie Lamb. And a warm welcome to his parents, Tom and Gloria Rendon. Pursuant to the election on January 11th, 2016 of Anthony Rendon for the office of Speaker, I'm appointing a select committee on escort to bring Speaker-elect Rendon, his spouse, Annie Lamb, and his parents, Tom and Gloria Rendon, to the rostrum. Members should retire to the rear of chambers as I call your name. Assembly members Calderon, Assemblymember Chow, Assemblymember Daly, Assemblymember Gonzalez, Assembly members Medina and Salas. The members will now escort Speaker-elect Rendon and his family to the rostrum. It is my pleasure to administer the oath of office to Speaker-elect Anthony Rendon. Assisting in the administration of the oath is his family. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Anthony
Rendon,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and the
California,
Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, esteemed guests, I am pleased to present to you the 70th Speaker of the California State Assembly, the Honorable Speaker Anthony Rendon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to start today by picking up where I left off after my election in June. January. It was in January. I remember by thanking my wife, Annie. Today is a special day for us both, and it's made even more special by the fact that we get to share it with our families. Between us, we have 4 sisters, 3 brothers, 7 nephews. We had 6 nephews last week, now we have 7. 3 nieces, and 6 men and women who decided to marry into it all. And you know what? They're nearly all here today. In that vein, it's important for me to point out the first time that I ever witnessed the swearing in of a speaker. It was just over 6 years ago when my good friend and the man who would later perform our wedding ceremony, John A. Perez, was sworn in on March 1st, 2010. He stood here, and I sat there, way up there, in the back. One of the first things John did on that day was to acknowledge a slight sense of emptiness and to comment on the bittersweet fact that his parents were no longer alive to share the moment with him. Neither Annie nor I take for granted how lucky we are that our parents are not only living, but that they are also here in the chamber with us today. To be able to share today with both of our moms and both of our dads means the world to us, and we thank them for all they've done for us and for our families. I also want to thank the governor, constitutional officers, the Senate Pro Tem, and other dignitaries and elected officials for being here today. To my family and friends, you honor me. You honor me not only by your presence here today, but also because of what you mean in my life. Thank you. To the former speakers who are here today, thank you for your goodwill and all the guidance that you've provided. Speaker Atkins, thank you for the honor of swearing me in. That is only the latest gracious act that you have performed during this transition. Thank you as well for your commitment to progressive values and for the empowering way that you have led this House. To our Republican leader, Chad Mays, thank you again for your devotion to our state. Thank you for your friendship, and thank you for the candid and constructive conversations that we've had thus far. I know that all of the goodwill between us will continue at least until the next legislative softball game, when we will destroy you again. Threw down that gauntlet, didn't I? Thank you, Chad. Thank you. I also want to thank my staff, both past and present, for all that they've done. Neither my staff nor Assembly staff in general can really be thanked enough for their efforts in making this House run and for ensuring that all of us look good and smart. Yeah. Capitol staffers will always have an ally in me and an advocate in Annie, who herself was a staffer in this building for 5 years. We know how this place works, and we know that it can't work without you, so thank you. This is one of those days after which Annie and I will sit back and ask ourselves, how the hell did that happen? It seems like Annie and I are constantly pinching ourselves and wondering how we ended up in so many of the places that we've ended up lately. It doesn't quite make sense that either of us should be here. And quite honestly, neither of us was really supposed to be here. By now, most of you know my story. I was a terrible high school student, terrible college student at first, too. And were it not for California's high-quality, low-cost university system, I would not be here today. In those rare instances when I was able to land a job, I worked in the graveyard shift in a series of factories and warehouses, always trying to find a way to save enough money to pay my way through school, always watching other people get off the bus, excited about their day at college. That's my story. Quite honestly, I've really grown tired of telling it. But I don't believe that any of you know Annie's story. Annie is the daughter of hardworking immigrants who fled one country because of war and fled another because they weren't wanted there. While most kids her age were playing, Annie was working in the fields, not far from here, picking fruit. She continued to work in the fields straight through high school. Her parents always worked hard at multiple jobs, and while they did, she cooked and cleaned and took care of house chores. Neither Annie nor I were born with much, but we worked hard, and somehow we ended up here. But we also had a lot of help. We had help not just from neighbors and family, but we had help from California, a state that invested not only in us, but also in millions just like us. It was California that helped us to get here, and it's to this state to which we are indebted. Annie and I benefited from California. We benefited from its public housing projects and its low-income home loan programs. We benefited from its food stamps and its free meal programs. We benefited from this state's English as a second language and its diversity programs. We benefited from its unemployment assistance, and yes, we benefited from this state's affirmative action programs. We also benefited from California's great public schools and universities and their financial aid. And we benefited from access to its public parks, its beaches, its mountains, its forests, and its coast. We benefited from the generosity of a state that promised to never turn its back on us and it never did. That's how we made it here. That's our story. We made it here because California enabled us to get here, and because California wanted us here. I know many of you have similar stories. When we all reflect on how did we get here, we also need to be thoughtful about what we are doing to enable others to get here as well. Colleagues, in the years that we have left in this chamber, we will each have the opportunity to pay California back for all that it has provided. When I spoke in January, I said that the voters extending term limits has great potential to change how we do business. Voters put their faith in us to do more and to do better. Here's how I see my part in our effort. First of all, I'm not going to carry any bills this year. Instead, much of my energy will be spent helping the Assembly operate with as much efficiency and collegiality as possible. And I want each of you to achieve the best and the most for the people that you represent. We won't always agree on issues or approaches, but I believe everyone here deserves an environment where they can advocate forcefully for their ideas and their constituents. Despite not authoring legislation myself, I will continue fighting for the needs of my district and for what I believe in. My primary task will be one of focusing and framing. In the effort ahead, there are 3 areas in particular we should focus on: poverty, oversight, and participation. Poverty. The single biggest shadow on the Golden State is the number of children we have living in poverty. Almost 2.5 million children in the greatest state, in the most powerful nation on this planet, are right now living in poverty. That's unacceptable. We need to make investments and provide opportunities that lift California families out of poverty and give all of our children a better chance. Oversight. In my first year of this House, I demanded that the State Parks Department be held accountable to California's taxpayers. Last year, in oversight hearing after oversight hearing, and in press release after press release, I demanded that the PUC be held accountable to ratepayers. So my own experiences has shown me that we must continue to demand that this state's departments and units be held accountable, and it's our duty to ensure they are. We must also remember the need for oversight doesn't just apply to laws and other institutions, but to this legislature itself. We must always be accountable to the taxpayers, to the voters, each other, and ourselves. Participation. I believe that this state and this body must focus on participation and on ensuring that Californians are engaged in our democracy. In my first effort at elected office, I received 8,700 votes in a district of 500,000 people. It was hard for me to really consider that a win in 2012. And I think we need to do more to make sure that Californians are involved, especially in communities where the needs are great, but the engagement hasn't been. One way, of course, is to get barriers out of voters' way. We're making progress, and last year's automatic registration bill will help. And when there's an ongoing campaign across this country to keep people from voting, we must continue to fight for the voting rights of every Californian. We also have to step up and give people something to vote for, real actions that make real differences in real lives. Because of our state, because of its size, the scope of our challenges, there can be a tendency in the Capitol for us to think in the abstract. We have to remember that what we do here isn't just about policies or programs. It's about real people and the struggles that they face every single day. Like some of my constituents who have water they can't drink and yards their kids can't play in, and constituents in your district who haven't felt the economic recovery the way others have. or who are fighting the ravages caused by years of drought, who are living day to day with no roof over their heads. Different struggles, one state. Colleagues, this year marks the 50th anniversary of California voters putting the state in the hands of a full-time legislature. And looking around this chamber, I can say that it's in good hands. Teachers' hands, farmers' hands, inventors' hands, hands that nurtured, hands that put on the uniform of our nation's military. Today I raise my hand to take the oath to serve as your speaker. One day, that oath may be taken by one of you sitting way up there. And one day, it may be taken by some other Californian who right now is riding a bus or picking fruit in a field. Someone who will benefit from the work we do to enable them, believe in them, and invest in them. Thank you.
Without objection, the remarks and proceedings related to the special order of business shall be printed in the journal. The session schedule is as follows. Tuesday, March 8th, floor session at 3:45 p.m. for the Chief Justice State of the Judiciary Address. Wednesday, March 9th, check-in session. Thursday, March 10th, floor session at 9 a.m. This concludes our business on the daily file. All other items remaining shall be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Seeing and hearing no further business, I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Holden moves. Mr. Mays seconds. This House stands adjourned until 3:45 on March 8th. Quorum call is lifted.